Hey, welcome to another episode of Total Disruption. I'm Dr. Jake Glendenning on behalf of the Michael Labersi. I am here with Jesse Gilmore today. Jesse, you created Niche in Control is the organization you're playing with, and Jesse's going to spend some time with us today and just talk about taking back your time and leverage. And our audience is like, oh God, this is just Jake's wheelhouse. He loves this. This is going to go off the rails, and that's there's a reason for it. And Jesse knows that too is there's a reason leverage is so critically important in your business. So Jesse,
Mhm.
tell everybody a little bit about you, man. Good. Welcome to the
Yeah,
show.
absolutely. So thank you so much, Jake. And for those that don't know me, my name is Jesse P. Gilmore, and Niche and Control is actually my fourth business. My first three businesses were based around my skills. So if I didn't work didn't get done, and I didn't really actually understand leverage. And I was working 60, 80-hour weeks for years and got to a place where I started to lose the vision of the company and the passion for it because I was too close to the trees to see the forest. And it wasn't until in between my third business and my fourth one that I went into corporate America. I learned a lot more about some geeky stuff called processes and single points of failure, and systems. And really, what I was learning was how to make a business not rely on a single person. And what was really interesting about that learning in corporate was it was basically the thing that I was missing in my previous businesses. And so when I was working in corporate, led towards an acquisition of $180 million. And I started realizing, holy cow, this stuff is actually very valuable. And it could probably help people that might be where I was in my previous businesses. So I started Niche and Control in 2019. Didn't really know too much about agencies, which I ended up starting to work with them in the way beginning. And it wasn't until I took my first digital marketing agency client from a 15,000 per month to 100,000 per month in 9 months, implementing what I call the leverage for growth method. And ever since then, I've coached over 500 agencies implementing this method, refining it, writing a book about it, doing a podcast with it, all geared towards this idea that founders are meant to be freed up. Leverage is the tool or the way to do it. And there is a specific way of doing that that's different from everybody else's in the market kind of like method. So yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of like a
So I'm going
cool.
to back into something with that because you said something really critical in the beginning where you had lost some of the love for your business, in those
Hmm.
first couple because you were too close to the trees to see the forest.
Hmm.
And a lot of people get that, right? And
Hmm.
they're because you're a solopreneur, you think, and I cannot tell you how many times I've heard it over the, years that I've coached. And
Hmm.
Jesse, he's got 500 agencies. He's heard it at least 500 times of the I'm the guy that has to do all the things because I'm the one that
Hmm.
knows. And
Hmm.
that's such a bottleneck for everybody's business. And you talked about you had lost the vision in your
Hmm.
business. You weren't seeing the vision. And I think that's super critical because I coach on this all the time too. So
Hmm.
what talk to us a little bit about making sure. I mean, a lot of people are going to be solopreneurs for a good long while, right? It doesn't mean you're going to hire 100 people, this massive staff, and you're going to build this big thing right out of the gate. You may simply be leveraging a tool right away, or you might be leveraging a person right away. um,
Hmm.
how critical when you're coaching, Jesse, is to make sure you remind that business owner of the vision, like bring them back to
Hmm.
the vision before they're leveraging.
Hmm. Super critical. Part of the reason being is that all founders didn't get into, well, let me take a step back. All entrepreneurs, people that are geared towards building something that can last beyond them, didn't get into entrepreneurship for anything other than freedom. Freedom of time, freedom of finances, freedom of whatever. And a lot of times what happens is that if we don't understand business structures and business systems and processes, it makes it to where we basically own a job. And we're used to that because we worked for other people, and we kind of go, okay, I'm going to do it on my own, and you kind of stay in your lane. And the original vision of a person going into a business or starting a business is something that they need to tap back into. A lot of times in the beginning of coaching, I'll get them to do what's called a 3 Selves exercise, where who are you today, current state kind of breakdown, and then who do you want to be remembered for sometime in the future. And then if you think about these two gaps, if I just left it there, it would suck. But then you start going, okay, who's that person that you're becoming that's letting go of the stuff that's holding you back and then embracing this newer version. And I talk a lot about transformation because it's tapping back into that original vision. And the original vision for majority of entrepreneurs is freedom. And the way to get freedom is by using leverage.
Which is discipline. We talk about that all the
Mm-hmm.
time, right? So many people are like, they take freedom a different way, and they get it. And I look at solo salespeople, whatever their sales thing is
Mm-hmm.
they quit a 9 to 5, which is usually like an 8 to 9:30 at night, and they quit
Mm-hmm.
that particular job thinking that I'm only going to have to work like 2 or 3 hours a day, and they give themselves permission to do so much less work rather than
Mm-hmm.
leveraging it out. And you bet you can have one or the other. You can have a bunch of time to have freedom, but you're not going to have any money to do anything. You're just sitting around doing nothing. Or you
Mm-hmm.
can get disciplined. And this is where Jesse's talking about the processes and the systems and the tools and the people. That's
Mm-hmm.
discipline, right? Being able to
Mm-hmm.
manage that, manage your calendar. That's how you actually
Mm-hmm.
generate freedom. And you're totally right. Like and I think about that every time I hear it. I see Steve Harvey in my head playing Family Feud. We surveyed 100 business owners, and the top 5 answers are on the board. Yeah, number one answer is always freedom every
Mm-hmm.
single time. And
Mm-hmm.
then number two is, for some strange reason, I don't know where the billboard exists, to make $100,000 a year. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
where that billboard lives that tells everybody $100,000 a year is the number, but I've heard that as many times as I've heard freedom. So it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there's the vision, right? You've got to be clear on it as a business owner, as a founder.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way that you're future casting that
Mm-hmm.
into, you're not just getting a job. You're not just the one person. You're the founder of an organization that's going to grow. So
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing? Like, what are you doing in order to get people out of that stuck mindset, which it is, guys, plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling it out. That
Mm-hmm.
stuck mindset of, I've got to do all the things. I'm the only one that knows how to do it. It'd be harder for me to train somebody else to do that. So it's easier if I just do it. I hope I'm hitting some chords with some people right now, because this is such a critical piece. Like, what are you doing to get them unstuck from there?
Yeah, totally. So it starts off with mindset and then goes into time. So mindset, if I can unlock, if Jake, you are a client of mine and I start going through the 3 Selves, and we get to a place where you're starting to actually truly understand the things that are holding you back. And it's a little bit scary, but you got to get to a certain place where you become so aware of it that you can't unsee it. And when you go through that, we without going so much into it, we go through an experiential burial ceremony where we write down the things that are actually like holding us back, and then why it's there. And then we have a ceremony, and some of our clients have done it in front of their wives or like burned it, and like it becomes like a thing, like this was Jesse before and then this is Jesse after. And when you make that declaration for yourself and you start future casting, the next thing that you look at, aside from mindset, is something very practical, which is your use of time. And if I were to have, well, actually, every client that works with me has to go through a weekly time log where every half an hour for 7 days, they log both personal and professional time with as much detail as possible. And if you get extra points, as where you add in, is this energy draining or energy uplifting? And that information gives us so much raw data, and to understand where do you want to go, right? And what do you need to do? And where are you at right now? And not just like what I feel like, it's like literally how am I using my time? And what we'll do is we'll start to reorganize their world, and looking at what can you eliminate that you're doing right now. That's just like, if you get rid of it, it doesn't do anything to the outcomes you're going after. What can you automate? And then what can you eliminate, automate, and then delegate? So if there's somebody upon your team or somebody that's like a fourth of what you pay yourself, Dan Martell talks about like 80% of 80% done by somebody else is 100% awesome. And that same kind of like mindset where if the person can get you to a 6-inch putt within whatever the task is, it makes you work on top of it as opposed to working in it. And then lastly, if you can eliminate, automate, delegate, what can you time block? And time blocking, a lot of people just think it's like allotting certain amount of time to execute it, which is one part. But the actual true unlock is when you batch blocks of time that use the same type of mental capacity. So like all technical stuff together, all sales stuff together, all client stuff together. And by doing that, you automatically start freeing yourself up to not only align with your energy and your what Dan Sullivan would call the unique ability, you're starting to position yourself to feel more fulfilled by the work as the business grows, and everything else kind of is like a domino afterwards. So that's the starting point.
And there's so much just right there that I just want to dive into. But the one is, I want to talk about time blocking real quick and touch on this one of how important that is and how much pushback most people get. So Jesse's combining a couple of different techniques and a couple of different tools here, and the 7-day energy drain, energy booster journaling technique. Every time I roll that one out, that's kind of like, that's the big howitzer when I have to roll that one out, and people are scared of it. They just, I get so much pushback with that one. And the reason is not because it's a difficult task. The reason is because they're afraid to confront the truth that they have spent a stupid amount of time doing something that does not serve them. That's the reason they don't want to do it, because they don't want the proof. They don't want to be held accountable to that. They don't want to be judged. And the reality is, as coaches, that's not what we do. Like we're not here to judge you on what it is. We're here to just, you're writing it down and we're going to point it out to you. You wrote it down. How do you feel about this? What do you think that's going to be? And that's such an amazing thing. And then you're talking about time blocking. And I love how you're establishing this a little bit clearer on bulking the tasks together. And that's a neuroscience piece, is doing the things together so your brain doesn't have to switch. And I'll give you the easy example of what Jesse's talking about. And I do this for people taking tests. Like a lot of professionals have to, real estate agents in particular, have to take a professional test. And there's a trick. I'm going to say it. There's a trick to making sure you pass a test the first time. And it is, you have to bulk the questions together. So if it's your brain is a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere, I think everybody understands that and they can establish it. One side is data, one side is math. That's kind of the easy button. So you bulk all your math stuff together and you do all the math stuff together because you're in that range, you're in that zone, versus I'm going to do a math question, then to go to a British literature question, to go to an English question, to go to your brain's all over. Tests are designed to throw you off. So why would you give yourself a test every day with your calendar? I mean, Jesse's bringing a brilliant point of do all your math first. And I always tell everybody, do the difficult thing first. The thing you hate doing the most, that's the most challenging for you, which typically is outbound sales calls, as an example, or some sort of follow-up. It's usually, which is wildly shocking to me, that people don't want to talk to people. But the first, okay, then you need to go talk to people. That's the first thing you need to do during the day, because you're going to burn out and you're not going to have anything left at the end of the day, and you're not going to want to do it. So I think it's brilliant the way that Jesse's pointing that out. So, all right. So we're getting through time block. We understand the vision. We're going to run them through the 3 cells. We're going to run them through the 7-day journal, which, man, that's a good one. I love that one. I don't use it often, but it's a good one. And then helping them understand how to batch. I mean, these are, I want to say, and I've heard it said, that these are the basics, right? These are the foundational things. But guess what? Most business owners don't do this. Yes. And this is critical. And as you do that 7 days of journaling, and I'm going to tell Jesse's story if I keep going, but there's a reason he's doing that one. So I'm going to back off and go, So what's the next step? Now there's some understanding, there's some acceptance, there's some accountability related to what people have got in there. What's their next step towards leverage?
Yeah. So if at the time you do the time log, if you are in like the 68-hour week time frame, our main goal is just to get used to doing the time logs and then continuing to do that same eliminate, automate, delegate time block. So the main goal with that is over a period of time to be able to not only have the weekends free, but to start carving out 8 to 10 hours per week to work on the business. That's ultimately what you're going after. Now, let's just say you go through it and you can only carve out 2 hours. Okay, what do you do with that time? And in those 2 hours, one of the cool things about the time log is it allows you to understand what type of work you're doing on a more repetitive type of basis. And so you start diving into the actual systems. The main goal with documenting systems is to make everything out of your head. So you don't really have to use a lot of cognitive ability for kind of like the same stuff over and over and over again. Centralizing information actually decentralizes the business, which removes the founder dependence, which is one of the biggest issues. And within the systems, the easiest thing, so if somebody is listening right now and they're like, system seems huge, what am I supposed to do? And what the heck does systems mean? There's an easy activity. We call it the task checklist assignment, which is basically you just do a brain dump and you go, what are the roles in a company and that are being done, and then what are the services that you offer? And once you have that list underneath the services, think about how do you actually deliver the work. So a lot of our clients are marketing agencies. So let's just say they do paid ads. The service is paid ads. The first thing that you do is a setup of a campaign, the launch of a campaign, the management of a campaign, and the account management part. Yeah. And then from there, you start looking at, okay, what's the first part of a setup of a campaign that you need? Probably asset creation. And then what's the ending point, the closing trigger of a process? And once you have these two end points, then you start to brainstorm everything that's in between those, put them in the order by which it is. We use a lot of Post-it notes. I'm going to see if I can find some real quick. It's very, very simple if you're in like an actual office setting to just have people brainstorm and write it down on a Post-it note and then put it on the whiteboard. For digital people or remote people, you can use things like Lucid Chart. It's like $15 or something. So, but that's the starting point. The main goal is that you can visually see a process. And once you do that, then you start looking at each one of those process steps, each one of the Post-it notes, and then start writing down exactly how to do it for each one of those.
And it's, again, it all sounds really simple. When the reality is, it is. It's not necessarily easy. Because let's back up and define something real quick. You said working on the business, and of course I've heard this because I've used this. I don't know how many times. You've got on the business and in the business, and we know the founders are stuck in the business over Pareto's principle over 80% of the time. So they always fight this. Well, how am I gonna get the freedom? When am I gonna have the time to make this switch? So like there's a mindset piece right there. And so explain working on the business. What are the typical tasks a business owner has to do when they're working on it versus in it?
Yeah, so in it is the job. Yeah, like that's the easiest way of kind of describing the work. On it is basically like what only a CEO can do. And so when you think about that, so an example, an hour before this, I worked on the business by working on a joint event with one of our strategic partners, and then we're embedding our scalable agency accelerator inside of their onboarding, right? I would never outsource that. Right. So that is like an on the business type of thing. But you can also use that time for building the systems like we just talked about. And a lot of times people think that they need more time. They just need to prioritize better. That's the thing. And the time log accesses one of the change management kind of models, which is OCTAR. It's like awareness, knowledge, desire, action, results, right? And when you become so aware of it, you start to open up to the idea that you probably need to do something better with your time. And another activity, if you really want to dive so deep into it, is you can look at that time log and then start associating a certain value per hour for those activities, right? Things like social media scrolling is actually negative dollars per hour. And then things like the strategic partnerships or system building can be a lot higher than what you'd ever charge a client. Because if you spend 1 hour building systems and it saves you 10 hours for the month, that's like that, what's called an asymmetric return. So working on the business is really just stuff that only CEOs can do, or setting the vision, or making it to where you're enabling the business to live on beyond you.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do is the dollars per hour thing,
Hmm.
particularly with founders, that have
Hmm.
been in it a couple of years and are ready to scale. Is go through and find out how much they actually make per hour, and then roll back through that particular task list and go, okay, if you're telling me that your time is valued at $200 an hour and you would never work for less than that,
Hmm.
how much could you pay somebody to do this over here? Oh, $9 an hour. So you're telling me that your time is actually worth $9 an hour.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
love doing that one, and that's another one that just hits people hard. And
Hmm.
but at the same time, you kind of have to. You've
Hmm.
you've got to jar the car a little bit here to get people shaken out of that comfort, shaken out of that familiarity of just I'm so trapped in this.
Hmm.
Because it is you're gonna have to get disciplined in order to get the freedom. I totally get
Hmm.
that. So what prompted you, like when you started coming out of corporate America? Was there
Hmm.
was there a person? Was there a book? Was there there something catalyzed you to go, this is my passion, this is my vision, and I'm gonna build this because other people need it? What drove you there?
Are you familiar with lucid dreaming?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I had a lucid dream when I was 18. And I won't go so much into the dream, but the dream basically outlined that I'm going to set up a business with my brother. And that was actually the start of my first business was with Jeremy. But what I found is that there was a sense of significance that I wanted. I wanted to impact people. And I'm like a coach, like, a coach before all the other stuff. Like I care about client results more than revenue or whatever. I have that like inherent like desire. And I think what started happening was I started taking a lot of assessments to understand like who I am and kind of like what my unique ability is. And as I kind of looked at it, I was strategic thinking is like my number one strength at a StrengthsFinder, and like Relator and Learner and Maximizer and Significance are like the things. And so if anybody knows what a StrengthsFinder is, you'll know exactly what my personality is just based around that. And when I started to understand that my greatest gift in the world is actually to position myself according to my strengths and then empower others to be able to support it. And I started realizing that it's kind of like everything happens for a reason. And a lot of times we have to look backwards to kind of figure out in hindsight how things aligned. And just that kind of like reflection that happened during the acquisition in corporate America, it like kind of like jarred me. It was like it disrupted my world, and it got me to start thinking about what if all of this, like everything, including my childhood, including my previous businesses that were quote unquote failures, because I dissolved them as they were becoming more successful because I was losing my freedom. And then like, what if corporate, even in the acquisition, was all teaching me something, and the creation, and then 2020 happened. Right. So in the middle of that, and I went into this like, okay, what is going on? And for the first 3 months of April 2020, I was actually going through this really deep reflection of like, if everything was happening for a reason, what it actually is. And that was the birth of the first version of Leverage for Growth. And we've gone through 6 versions and 500 clients since then. So, yeah.
And it is, man. It's you use the word versions, and it's upgrading the iteration, right? We
Mm-hmm.
always talk about, and we stuck with this, and this comes from back 2000, right? This is Y2K stuff, was
Mm-hmm.
version 2.0. I
Mm-hmm.
still hear that all the time, but that's all we're
Mm-hmm.
doing. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
you've changed the business or that you're doing something totally different. It's, okay, so the face of the marketplace has changed a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
we've got to adjust, right? We've got to move this to this marker. We've got to add this or subtract this.
Mm-hmm.
As a fluid business, in a you're in a business, you're in a B2B space, you're in a business to
Mm-hmm.
business service space. We have to change because the businesses are always changing, because the marketplace is always changing. And the
Mm-hmm.
same is true in your business. If you are in the audience, regardless of what your business is, you've got to evolve one
Mm-hmm.
way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, it's different iterations. It's going to look different than when you started it. The key is to go, just to fall back to the vision. Why did I start
Mhm,
this in the first place? What's my purpose?
mhm,
What's the vision? So in the
mhm.
last minute here, man, Jesse, how do we find you? How do we get a hold of you?
I'm on a lot of podcasts, but I'm just
We
kidding.
can
But
hear you, but we want to reach you. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm most active on LinkedIn, Jesse P. Gilmore. Include the P. If you search on Google for Jesse Gilmore, you'll find Gilmore Girls. So Jesse P. Gilmore. And on LinkedIn a lot. If you have a conversation with me on there, I'm friendly and I'll give a bunch of resources. Nicheincontrol.com. So NICHEINCONTROL.com. And you can check us out. We do events for agencies. We're really focused around marketing agencies and the founder. But for anybody that resonates with it, I'll give the link to Jake to put in the show notes for a free copy of my book. It's the Agency Owner's Guide to Freedom. And actually, we only touched on 2 of the 5 steps within the Leverage for Growth program. So if you do want a free copy of that, happy to send it over.
Awesome. Jesse, great conversation today. Really appreciate it. And the fact is, we only touched on a piece of what you need to know, which means you should reach out to Jesse. Find him on LinkedIn. Gilmore is 1L, Gilmore. Reach out to Jesse on LinkedIn. Find out what the additional steps are. Connect with him. And if he resonates with you, absolutely go do some cool things with your business about leverage. And there's some great tools in there that we gave you guys today. Place to start, but you can't succeed alone. We cannot succeed alone. Reach out to one of us, reach out to Jesse and go, hey man, I need help interpreting what this means now that I did the thing, because that's what you need the guide for. So guys, well, Jesse, thank you so much for playing along today. Really appreciate you. On behalf of Michael Labersi, I am Dr. Jake Clendenning. It is your turn to disrupt.